and welcome inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 706, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
A.K.A. Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we are going to review the Emilia Romagna Grand. It's easy for me to say in Italian and English. We're going to review that race at Imola. And before doing that, well, you know what we do, right? We do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it.
That's what we do.
Watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do on race reviews. Before doing that, I have to introduce my guest tonight, which of course means I have to go all the way south to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, nestled in the more Fort Worth than he is Dallas, so to speak, but fresh off a top 5 finish in the IMSA series, Heart of Racing, Aston Martin. Oh, but who is he? Who is this guy?
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy. It's...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good, yes. And
Congrats on the top, 4th place?
4th place, so that's equal to our best result, but I would say it was definitely our best performance.
That was awesome.
We had a hunt in there to get second. We really feel strongly we could have got second, but unfortunately there was a little gamesmanship near the end of the race with the Friends of Acura group, and then they held us up just a little bit to stop us from. There was another Acura was a lap down, but he kind of made his Acura very wide and allowed competitors to get away a little bit, but we were able to close back in, but we weren't able to get by. But definitely a good, strong finish, and we're going to do it all again in like nearly a week's time. The last race at 12 Hours of Sebring, so it's really good momentum coming into that for sure. So yeah, the driver did a great job. Yeah, the car was better, more competitive from the get-go, and it was a good track for us. And we were
brakes are good.
Brakes were good. Just tire life was really good, which is very, very crucial there. We're very good at that. Sometimes that hurts us because we can't put enough energy in the tire, but we're still working on that. So the Laguna track and what it gives to you and what challenges it have going to suit us. So, but we're still feeling good about going to Sebring too. Yeah,
so you feel like that Sebring track, then that's going to translate pretty well to Sebring?
Yeah, I mean, good thing was we've actually tested there a couple of times this year already, which is the only track we've really tested beforehand. So we feel like the car's coming on strong. We're understanding it more and should be there or thereabouts, as you like to say.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, somehow in the process of finishing 4th at Sebring or at Laguna, you also managed to get the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix watched.
Yes,
which is amazing.
I had to get up at 3 a.m. Luckily, I was on the West Coast, so the race was actually before we actually had to go to the track for the race. So I actually watched the whole race.
Oh, wow.
I had to set my little alarm clock. So
yeah,
it was a long
day.
Couple of days, actually, because right after the race, I had to fly back here because we did a track program we call Speed Club Monday. So we do those once a month, and we bring in race car drivers. We had Westfall in, Paul Gerard. We had Pierre Kleinebing, who's a multi-year winning touring car champion, and we do a little track day thing here in Texas. So I got in at 1 a.m. and then was straight at another track at 7 a.m. the next morning.
It's crazy. So, did you give Westfall a little noogie for his win? I
didn't even see Westfall. I went over his trailer a couple of times, but it's so weird. You're in this little paddock, and you think you'd see everyone all the time, but you're just so focused on your team, and basically, you work within it seems like a 10-foot circle, really. Right. So if you see someone, it may be in the bathroom.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Jeff's, he's such a rock star now. He's got an entourage.
Right. That's right. They just drop him down and the race, and then he leaves very quickly after.
He leaves. Yeah, he just comes in a helicopter, drives, gets in a helicopter, takes off. He's world class, Jeff Westfall now.
Yeah, I did learn a new thing in Laguna though. I learned lollipop etiquette, which apparently I'm not very good at.
Really?
Yeah, because Jeff Westfall's the team he won particularly they were pitted right next to us, and we were basically nose to tail with them at the race, and then coming into the pit stops, we were both nose to tail. So,
Yeah.
So they were right in front of us. So I had put the big lollipop thing, which is kind of large actually, in our pit box. But then evidently etiquette is to lift it up and let the other car come in, and then let us come in. Well, I didn't feel like that was a good idea. So, so I left it in the pit box, and that Ferrari just came in and just took the whole thing out. So.
Oh,
I don't.
Was Jeff driving?
No, Jeff wasn't racing this weekend.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe he was driving.
No, it was. It wasn't driving, but it was. I hung on to it, but I don't think he realized how big the actual sign was, because I'm not sure it could have done some damage to that Ferrari, but he just came through. And I was like, well, okay, fair enough.
That's funny.
So I was informed, next time, why don't you just lift it up?
Was it the weather?
Yeah.
Was it the weather tech team? Oh,
yeah,
funny.
yeah. But I was like, why would I do that? Why would I make it easy?
I'm going to lift it up for him. He's got to go around.
I'm elbows out, man, even with a pit bull.
Right. It's full contact pit strategy.
It is. Yeah. If I'm not driving the car, I can still take you out yourself.
That's right. You're still giving somebody some shtick and give them the wheel, and that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, good fun. Well, let's talk about the Emilia Romagna. First of all, I thought it was terrific, and this season, if there's any upside, like I said last podcast, if there's any upside this season, it's being able to see these legacy tracks that we haven't seen in a long time. Last time we saw the Imola circuit was 2006, and it's one of those tracks I love seeing. It was a fun track. It had elevation changes, some great corners, a DRS zone that wasn't too powerful, produced a great qualifying effort for Pierre Gasly up in fourth, which was just terrific. Those AlphaTauris really coming on song on this for what would be their home race at Imola, and it was terrific to see. But no matter how much I love this track, and I do like it, and really enjoyed seeing it again, there's no doubt that whatever you do at Imola, it all exists in the penumbra of the Senna Ratzenberger tragedy and the weight that has on all hearts, young and old, and it's difficult not to just be there, and there's just this mental and emotional cloud that just hangs at that place. Nothing, it's not necessarily the place's fault. It's just that's where that happened, with Ratzenberger and Senna and losing one of the greatest of all times.
Yeah, no, but they don't shy away from it either. Did you see the Dan had the big Senna portrait on it, and I didn't know if they had one for Ratzenberger too. Hopefully they did, because that was just a wicked weekend. Yeah, I mean, just you can't even imagine what that replay that weekend. You couldn't imagine how devastating it was. Yeah. And we were all there watching it. So at least most of us were. So. You can't get rid of it, and the ramifications of that weekend we're still feeling those today in a positive way. Even though the negative was massive on that weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Schumacher had said it. Sky played a little part of Schumacher after the race, and he said, he was just speechless, but he said, hopefully, we have to learn from this, right, is what Schumacher said at the time. And he was right. He was very prescient, because they did wheel tethers, higher side pods, or not side pod, but cockpit sides, and there was a host of safety measures that came in. Track safety. Yeah. It was a rethink from the professor.
Right. And it was a mindset change from the FIA, right? I mean, I mean, a lot of safety gains have been made ever since Jackie Stewart started pushing that stuff on.
Correct.
But it really was a bigger force after that.
Yeah, Max took it for real. And not that he didn't before. I think he was always a proponent of safety, but I think this was just so gut and soul-wrenching that they did, right? So it was, it's difficult, but that withstanding, this I thought is just a great track, and I forgot how much I missed this track. Just watching these turns and I think Martin Brundle said it best. There's all these turns, and F1 cars ignore 5 of them. The current day F1 cars ignore 5 of them. They're non-turns. But what in a driver's perspective, Paul? What are some of the toughest parts of this track?
I don't know if there's tough parts, because the track has a good flow to it, and there's I would call it more fun than challenging, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's always a challenge to go through any corner as fast as you can. The biggest one I would say probably is getting the car to be nimble enough in those chicanes, yet not too nose pointy in some of those medium speed corners. You know, we've got the elevation changes. You got to really keep that car neutral, a little bit of understeer through some of those, else you could be, you know, really chasing your tail the whole time. But to get the car to break in a straight line super quick and be able to change those directions quick, it's kind of a big compromise there. So to get that balance right within the car and within yourself, I think is probably the biggest challenge. But the track itself, I think, just, you know, every driver would, you know, relish the point of taking a really fast car through any of those corners. So I think it's, yeah.
You think it seemed like to me that kind of all the entities got the elements correct. I think I kind of felt like Pirelli kind of got the right compounds there.
Right.
I think the FIA kind of got the right DRS length there, not to overpower, but, you know, to at least close up. You know, some would argue maybe it could have been a little more powerful, but I think, you know, from my standpoint, they could just remove it. But
exactly.
But, you know, I think all the elements were there given the track, and I think it went off real well. Did you feel like the tires, DRS, all those elements?
I think they
right?
did. I think the teams obviously reacted a little quick for that, didn't they? Some of the teams. And I think they, you know, as we saw from what Lewis did, you know, the tires could really hold themselves for a very long time, which was interesting. So once
except
again,
for Max, but
he must have ran over something, right? Did they ever figure that out? I mean, that was a big quick thing, which could either happen from a sharpness on a curb or just running over something. There's a bit of shrapnel out there for sure. But yeah, just it seems the teams still aren't quite get all their heads around this graining phase of the tire, and they kind of panic and react to it. And obviously with the very condensed weekend, it was a lot different, and they were really more guessing than they would on other occasions.
And just for the record, I don't know where everyone stands. I don't like the compressed 2-day weekend. I just personally, I don't. I like the Friday practice sessions. I like having 2 additional sessions that they run. Stretch their legs a little bit. It gives time to see the cars, see the way they react, watch the programs that they run through, different weight loads, different tire compounds, long runs, short runs, quality runs. And I really enjoy that part of Formula One. And as a fan, if I was actually there, I definitely want to see the F1 cars run as much as humanly possible. Not condense it just to one practice session, so we might trip up some race strategy. That's not, you know, as a fan, I'm not there to watch the gotcha moment that a compressed schedule might put on the team's engineers. Whatever, I don't care. I want to see the cars run, period.
Right. I mean, you know, Formula One isn't just about passing, right? It's a technical challenge, and there's it's a whole big scope of things that interest people, and the progression through practices is one of those. And if a team can solve a problem, you know, make gains, if we're watching the in-car cameras now, which is great. And we can see how cars and drivers evolve through a weekend, which is just adds a whole nother dimension. So I'd agree to that, sure. Yeah.
I mean, you think about, I've mentioned this before in past podcasts, but think about one of the things I really liked was watching Lewis come into that first practice session and finding the limits. Right. You'll see him run wide on this corner. You see him run wide on that corner and this corner, and then watching him find the limits and then start honing the craft, right?
Right.
And he's finding the limits with that chassis, with those tires, and with those compounds. At each turn, he's finding the limit and his breaking points, and I absolutely love watching that develop over a weekend.
Right. Yeah, it's not for everyone, obviously,
but
I think. I do like the element, and yeah, they had to obviously drive pretty conservatively with the one practice session in the quali, right? They just couldn't push those envelopes too far. They couldn't risk anything at that point because they were going to be over it.
And you say, ooh, yeah, that compressor was really tricky. Really? It was Mercedes 1-2. It wasn't that tricky. Whatever. So let's talk about the race. Mercedes finishes 1-2. As I mentioned, Lewis Hamilton, P1, his 93rd win. Valtteri Bottas in P2. Bottas nabbed pole, Paul, set off in the lead of the race, had a good start, but his race was really hobbled on the second lap. Now, we didn't know this until a little bit later, but his race was hobbled then. He hit some debris at turn 7 on the second lap, did some significant floor damage to his car, and this left just enough this left him just enough off pace to be prey for Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Bottas then boxed early, as did Verstappen, to cover. And this seemed to really reveal a storyline for the team strategists in that those who stopped earlier had a little more difficult time of it versus those who stopped later. And this left Valtteri not only vulnerable to Max, but then vulnerable to his own teammate, Lewis Hamilton. And that's, that kind of set up the strategy. Bottas later would fall prey to Verstappen and may have ended really in third if it weren't for Max's bad luck. But yeah, that was it was unfortunate because there was that moment, Paul, at the very beginning. He had his lead looked good. He had like a second and a half, I think, over Lewis at that point on the first, and then you could sense that he was quite on pace. And even after that first stop when Max covered and he came out, it just seemed like his pace got a little more off as time went on, and that fuel burned off, Yeah,
it did seem to get worse. He seemed to be okay at the beginning, but if the damage was on lap 2, then he was dealing with that issue the whole time, right?
Right.
It was interesting. Did they say the piece was stuck there, or that it just caused damage?
Oh, I didn't read the detail.
For some reason, I thought they said something was stuck there, which would be pretty remarkable for him to drive it at all, considering how...
May have been George Russell's ego that got stuck up underneath there.
That's not right. That's not right at
Poor
all.
George.
Poor George.
But, if you wanted a humbling experience, he had one.
He did. I don't think he needs to be any more humble than he is at the moment.
No, I agree.
He doesn't need to be beaten down anymore. But, so it was a tough day for Valtteri. As I say, he did an awesome job in qualifying, etc. And to have something, just happen to you that wasn't anything but a cause of you to delete your pace, then what are you going to do? It just always happens to the Valtteri.
It always does.
And he gets a lot of flack, but you know what? He's racing against the biggest winning Formula One driver ever. I still think he's doing a damn good job. And to be second best to Lewis isn't a bad thing. It's just you're always going to be looked at as the second best person. Worse, you can be looked at worse than the best driver in the Ferrari or best driver there, but it's probably not really that true, is it?
I
bet Valtteri's like, come on, Lewis, retire. You've done it. You've done enough, right? Yeah.
You've done enough. Yeah. Well, it's the Barrichello situation,
Yeah.
He joins the ranks of people like Barrichello and Mark Webber, right?
Yeah. Always branded from that point out.
It's difficult. And all three of those guys, Mark Webber, Barrichello, Bottas, all three of those guys can drive the hell out of a car.
Oh, yeah.
They're all fantastic drivers.
Yep.
They just happened to at the time be up to against people that were off the charts.
Yep.
Yep.
Very
tough. For Lewis's race, this was great because it was, like I said, the strategists realized that those stopping earlier, that there was this opportunity for Lewis. It was at that moment that the team measured the strategy, kept Lewis out on a long first stint, and in doing so, they needed Lewis to gain a 26-second advantage over Bottas and Verstappen. That was the pit lane delta, right? Mm-hmm. So they needed him to deliver. It was sort of shades of nothing as dramatic as back in the past when Braun said, I need X amount of time out of Schumacher, and he did it and blew everyone away. But it did remind me of that. I mean, as good as I thought the team reading the tea leaves and that strategy on the fly and realizing, okay, wait a tick, let's run him long. He's managed the tires. The tires are managing well, as you mentioned earlier. Let's just run him long. Lewis, I need 26 seconds to cover the delta. That's your target. And to Lewis's credit, he delivered, right? So Lewis, in doing so, handed Mercedes their record-breaking 7th consecutive world title. And it really makes a terrific bookend for a team that has dominated the sport comprehensively since 2014 when the new hybrid engines came into F1. A fantastic result in the championship for sure. That's you run out of superlatives for a team that good, right? Yeah. But in particular, I thought the race by Lewis and his side of the garage and his strategist was terrific.
Yeah, no, it was, and I think it was an ongoing conversation they were probably having to how the tire was working. I mean, obviously Lewis was put back. He got a bad start. He was put back in third, so they had to think of something out of the box. And Lewis, as he's evolved in his career, has become, has every tool in his box, and that's one of them too. Be able to pull out those extra laps on a tire that maybe some people might give up on. And it seemed like he already knew it before. Yeah. Even though those guys pitted, he didn't panic once again.
And the safety car is a total gift, but
it is a gift. But I don't think it's going to change the.
I don't think it would have either.
No, I don't think it would have.
It was definitely an insurance. It just basically foregone conclusion ensured that happened. But he did have enough time to cover the gap.
Right, for sure. And as I said, when he dropped the hammer when they pulled in the pits, and then he pushed, and then you could see that the car still had a lot of pace, or had more pace than he was even showing at that point. And then the conversation between him and the pit lane about longevity, it didn't seem like he was, had an issue at all. Can you push another 10 laps? Yeah, maybe, I can go longer for sure, So very, very intelligent driving by him. If he's behind, he doesn't over-abuse the car and overreacts, and that just paid dividends. Yeah.
For all the right reasons in the world, we all consider Sergio Perez just a master on that tire preservation and being able to manage his tires, but Lewis is every bit there. Yeah. I mean, he is right on par with anyone as far as managing tires, and he did so in this race, and that's what that was the difference. Yep. He was able to do it. Yeah. All right, next up, let's talk about. Imagine that. Let's talk about Red Bull, shall we? Alex
Albon. Why are we talking about them so early?
Well, I don't know. Why are we talking about them so early? I guess I just didn't change them. All right, I'll skip. Let's come back.
You just made that assumption that Max is on the podium again.
Okay, I'm going to be serious with you. My pick, trying to stave off Skip Williams in our Fantasy GP League.
Yeah.
My pick was Lewis the win, Valtteri, and Max.
Yes.
That was my pick for podium.
That was mine too.
So
completely
I was thinking,
out of the box there.
Yeah, way out of the box thinking there. But yeah, and so that's why I have Red Bull. It was wishful thinking that he was going to be third, but apparently not. Remind me on 15. I'll come back to them.
We can talk about him now. It's fine because he was running up front. Let's just get.
He was. All right. Let's talk about it. All right. Let's talk about Red Bull. Yeah. So Max had a good start, flying past Lewis and hounding the wounded Mercedes of Bottas, where he eventually overtook the Finn in a good move. But as Lewis jumped them both, he was relegated to second place and was running to the flag and basically a podium finish at this point. Max said Bottas was actually holding the two of them up from chasing Lewis down. Unfortunately for Max, he had an immediate tire failure. It looked like an explosion that ended his race and handed second place to Bottas. I guess it's down to debris. It's what it looked like. I was watching the onboard that F1.com later posted, and it almost looked like the inside shoulder started unraveling.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not see that. Yeah, either way, big explosion, big casino.
Yeah.
It's a real shame, I mean, thank goodness Max is there to fight it out and at least mix it up with those Mercedes. And it was really paying dividends, actually. Obviously, Bottas was struggling, and Max, didn't take too long to dispatch him, but he did have to work for it still. I don't think he had enough of Hamilton anyway after the way with the strategy and how everything worked out. But he definitely deserved a good, strong second place. So
yeah.
That puts Valtteri in second place in the Drivers' Championship, if he wasn't before. Did it put Verstappen out of a chance of winning the World Championship, which
for sure,
obviously a non-issue anyway, really.
Right.
It is good to see that Max can still fight it out with them because no one else seems to have any way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For Alex, his race looked like he might nip into the points, but a spin during the safety car restart cost him that possibility, and a late stop for fresh rubber put him in last. Alex said it was a tricky race, that he spent a lot of time being in a train of cars. He said he isn't sure what happened, but the cold tires, I suspect, didn't help, and he spun as he got on the gas after the safety car. It's 3 races in Italy this season and 3 DNFs for Red Bull. And Christian Horner said it's an absolute shame because at this track, they actually felt that they had pace. Really? And Alex was fighting with Renault pretty much all day and Max heading for a podium. It's a shame. I think Red Bull felt like they had the pace and it just didn't deliver, either in the form of Alex Albon and tragically with the tire deflation in the form of Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Albon didn't get a great qualifying. He got decent qualifying, but he still needs to be up alongside Max to really have an opportunity. You can't, if you're stuck behind cars, whatever, you can think out that excuse, but if the only reason is because you qualified behind them, that you have to fight through them.
Yeah.
I think, the confidence is gone. We talked about this last time as well.
The thrill is gone.
The thrill is definitely
gone.
BB
King for you.
You hear him over the radio. He just seems exasperated. He doesn't understand why things are happening, which is an even worse thing to say. The mistake. Obviously, it was really tricky for the guys who didn't pit for tires at that restart, as we saw.
Yeah.
You were pretty much a target for the votes first 2 laps before you can get some heat in them. And Alex, unfortunately, came a cropper, getting a little too greedy with the cold tire, and definitely that's why it spun him around, but it didn't spin anybody else around. So it's a execution by the driver. It's not a team excuse at that point. Yeah,
right. And that point you just made about the people that didn't box and the cold tires was the exact reason that we'll get into with Racing Point. Let's talk about Renault. Esteban Ocon, a DNF. Daniel Ricciardo, P3. Unfortunately for Ocon, he had a mechanical issue as Esteban pulled off the track, ending his race early. So there's not much to talk about from his race in that perspective, although I feel like he was running well. I think, definitely in the whole scheme of things on the Constructors' Championship battle, I think he was heading well and looking to be in the points, which would have been critical given Ricciardo's finishing position on the podium. So that's unfortunate for Esteban. Ricciardo, much better race, and even though Perez jumped him at his pit stop, he put his foot down and stayed in 4th place. Now, unfortunately for Sergio, when he boxed during the safety car, Dan was there to inherit the track's position and rode that home for his 2nd podium finish of the season. That's a big win for Dan and Renault, as they just claimed 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. So they're now currently running 3rd in the Constructors' Championship with 135 points. Oh, yeah, huge money. They're at 135 points, folks. And here's your battle to watch for the remainder of the season. It's Renault at 135 points, McLaren and Racing Point both tied with 134 points.
Oof.
So that's your battle to be watching. Lewis and Valtteri, that's a foregone conclusion.
Right.
But this battle is really spicy. And with Lance Stroll, floundering around at the back of the grid and people saying, oh, he's a little rusty, that kind of crap just is not going to get it done for Racing Point when you have Dan making podiums for Renault and those 2 McLarens have got to really pick it up, right?
Yeah. I mean, the McLaren driver pairing is great. I still think Ocon he's being overshadowed by Ricciardo right now. I don't think he's enjoying that too much at all. But Ricciardo's doing what he's always done, really. You give him a weapon, he'll fight tooth and nail with it. And luckily Renault were giving him that weapon. And it's, their goal going into the season was probably 4th place. But because of Ferrari's woes, 3rd place is a massive reality. And that would be a big boon to the Renault group, which were maybe, should we stay in Formula One? Should we not? I mean, It looks like they're getting it all right, which is great to see, if they keep making that progress. But right now, it seems like Daniel Ricciardo is making the progress maybe more than Renault is. If you look at Ocon as, the real benchmark of where the car is. He's not driven it. He's not doing anything spectacular, but he is a very handy driver. So I think, he's that extra little pixie dust that is really paying dividends for Renault. And unfortunately, he's now exceeding expectations and beating the team he's going to be moving to. So it's got to be pretty tough for him on figuring that out. Well, actually, no, it's not going to be very tough. He's just going to try and do as well as he can every time. But it'll be interesting when he walks through the door at McLaren next year and say, yeah, thanks a lot, Dan.
I was just going to say, it says a lot about Dan in knowing that he's not going to stay at Renault. Yeah. This is his last year. He could literally put his feet on the desk at this point. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. And he's going to McLaren. Now, that's a team he'd probably like to lift off the pedal a little bit and get them up into third because that's worth millions of dollars, right? So it wouldn't be a bad idea to have McLaren ahead of Renault at the end of the year so Dan could just put in some pedestrian runs. McLaren gets third. They get multi-million dollars and all that kind of stuff. But that's not what he's doing.
Yeah, no.
I mean, he's attack mode all the time, and he's beating the team he's going to, which is millions of dollars, and he's going for it,
Yeah, it's not in his DNA to even think about that process. And honestly, I don't think McLaren would appreciate it anyway, because there's a reason why they wanted Dan. And
this is
the
why.
thing for them is this is proving they made a great decision, right?
Right. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, great result for Dan. AlphaTauri, speaking of great results, Daniel Kvyat in P4, Pierre Gasly tragically a DNF. Pierre looked good on Saturday. Fourth place quali, looked great. And he was ready for what I honestly believe was a potential podium position on Sunday, but that all was scuttled when the team noticed a water pressure issue. And although they tried to fix the car while it was on the grid just prior to the start, the issue wasn't resolved, and it was a terminal issue, and they for the engine, and they boxed him in DNF. So a real shame for Pierre, who was set for a terrific race and may very well have claimed that podium spot for himself, to be honest, given his teammates' result. But tragic because I think he was there to deliver for the home Grand Prix.
Yeah, why don't these teams listen to us and they get their little flex seal?
I know.
Tricks. You got the tape.
Yeah.
You got the cork.
There's absolutely nothing.
Hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Seal.
There's absolutely nothing that won't fix. I mean,
No.
Phil Swift, just ask him.
Just tell Honda, if there's a water leak, you just put the tape on it.
Just a tape.
If you can float a boat on the tape, surely it can hold some water into an engine.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not a technical whiz, but I know that.
Absolutely. Just put a
Right.
little Flex Seal tape on there and done.
Yeah, done. But maybe it hasn't made its way to Italy or France yet.
Maybe.
But yeah, it is a real shame. I think Gasly's doing an amazing job.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
I
is.
really do. I think week in, week out, Dan Kvyat's doing pretty decent, but
Yep.
Pierre is just nailing it on the head. And I don't know why Red Bull wouldn't be thinking of
I
putting
thought a lot about this over the weekend, Paul. And, well, not too much. I had a new puppy that I'm...
Yes, in between your little 10-minute naps in between.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm trying to housebreak a puppy and crate train him. But I was thinking about this. Why would they not move Gasly up? And everybody says, well, that's because they're going to take Perez or Hulk or somebody at Red Bull. Okay, yeah, that may or may not be. I don't know. I don't know that, all right? Those are all speculation. But if AlphaTauri has changed their goals and they legit have scored podiums and they're trying to run at the sharp end of the grid, having Pierre Gasly in that team delivering the points that they need to get that team from just being a junior driver program to get it up in the championship to making millions of dollars to offset the cost of running that team,
Right.
then you got to get some drivers in there that are comfortable with that car, comfortable with that team, and score some serious points to get them fourth, fifth in the championship. I'm not so sure that isn't, because I read their comments after they re-signed Gasly, and they read like this team is legit trying to go for some serious points and get up there, not just piddle around in the back trying to develop teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point because obviously if they go to that without an engine program, they're going to have to be spending a lot more dollars on developing their own engine program or something like that. So the AlphaTauri team may have to survive or exist on its own competitiveness a bit more than just, we'll just spend our extra little budget on this team and, train some new drivers coming through. Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. I think that they signed him to AlphaTauri to hold Pierre from going anywhere else. So till they make the decision on who's going to replace Albon, because I don't think there's any reason they're going to keep Albon. There's too many, as you said, there's Perez and Hülkenberg sitting out there, and they've got Gasly in the group that right now, who would you pick out of the four? I think Albon would be everyone's last choice, no matter which team you've got. Unfortunately, we like the guy, but
yeah, I do.
He's just, whether it's the internals in the team that just crush people's spirit, maybe it's the Max Verstappen equation, I don't know, but either way, it's just not working. Yeah. So in my mind, I feel like it's keeping their options open, because there's no doubt if Red Bull suddenly decided we want gas, it's not like AlphaTauri have a block.
No.
They're going to go, well, you have to take him because
there you go.
you're part of the team. So I think it just made sure that they kept Gasly in the family there, so he wouldn't go somewhere else. And, if they do figure out someone else they think is better to run alongside Max, then more power to them.
No, I believe you're probably right. I think that's probably the whole reason for it. I was just trying to find other reasons that may make sense financially for this team to want to keep Gasly there and not get him in Red Bull. And another part of that reason is they have Max. So if the cars aren't changing next year, you got Max. He's going to deliver maximum points, no pun intended. So having Gasly there, so okay, he's running on Max's tails, but Max has got that car, squarely in second place in the constructors as it is on his own. Right. So does he need Gasly finishing right there? Maybe not. But boy, AlphaTauri could sure use the points, right? And Gasly's delivering. So I don't know.
Yes,
yep. Let's talk about Ferrari. Oh,
and it's always a big emotion.
It's always a big emotion with Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, Charlie in P5, Sebastian Vettel P12. Leclerc ran well all afternoon, and the team had a gamble of leaving him out on older tires to go for fourth. Ultimately, he couldn't hold off the AlphaTauri of Daniel Kvyat. Yes, you heard that right. A Ferrari couldn't hold off an AlphaTauri at an Italian Grand Prix. That's a bitter pill to swallow if you're Tifosi, man.
Yeah, just kick them while they're down. Why don't you? Yeah.
That one hurts.
Yeah.
So he just couldn't, but it was the gamble they had to run. It got him in fifth. I think if they'd have boxed him with Perez, he'd have been back 7th, 8th,
Oh, yeah.
And so the track position at this point is what they had to go for.
Right, and the other cars were technically probably faster even with the new tires on. So, I think it was a good scenario, great run by, once again, Leclerc making more out of the car than probably is there.
Yeah, for sure. Vettel may have been in the points had it not been for that miserably long pit stop that threw him out of the points and into the midfield where he struggled home to 12. Vettel and Leclerc were actually relatively competitive on those medium compounds early on. So there is that. And there again, like I said last week, this race I would say somehow suggests that maybe some of these upgrades they're bringing are, thereabouts, they're working well. They're not dragging the car back any. The car seems to be a little more competitive, seems to be better on those medium compounds. Leclerc placing up in P5 at top 5 finishes. So, that's all heading in the right direction anyway. Yeah,
I think they're just, they're not obviously changing the engine. They're just reworking the car for the lack of power that it has. So
more downforce.
Yep. They're just fixing some of the issues that they didn't think they'd have to think about because they had a boatload of power. But but Vettel, I don't know. It's when they're talking encouraging, it's for a 8th or 9th place finish. Yeah. I'm not sure that really matters to him or anyone else, really.
I don't think it matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about racing points. Sergio Perez in P6. Lance Stroll.
I want it now! What's the matter with those twats down there?
and P13. Sergio had a good start, ran one of his patented tire management strategies for a long first stint, which paid dividends as he was running in third pole and looking for that podium. And in his mind, and I think in mind of everyone, that podium was his. Yeah. Perez inexplicably pitted when the safety car came out and got off the hard compounds for the restart. But as Leclerc and Ricciardo didn't, the Mexican ceded the podium to Ricciardo and managed to relegate himself to sixth place. At the time I was watching that, I wasn't quite sure why they boxed him and ceded track position so late in the race. But, after reading their explanation, some of that was, look, had we not boxed him, there's a very good chance that the ones behind him would have boxed. They would have done the opposite, put on a fresh tire, and ran him down on those cold, hard compound tires, and he would have been, in trouble there. But their point was very much what Albon was dealing with. They were concerned that he had ran on those hard compounds, that they were running behind the safety car. They were going to be stone cold. And as they got started again, they were worried that he was going to be an absolute sitting duck. And certainly if people boxed for fresh rubber, they thought he was a sitting duck. So they thought boxing him out of third, hoping people would come with him. They didn't, but they thought with fresh rubber, he'd be able to make it back up to the podium. Unfortunately, it didn't happen.
Yeah, sometimes it's nicer to be a bit further back in the line there so you can react to the opponents ahead, because, we do it in the IMSA series as well. You're like, if you're basically in the top 3 or 4, you're the one making the decision. Everyone else is reacting from you, and unfortunately, that didn't work for Perez, because if there's anyone who's going to go better on a longer tire, you'd think it would be Perez, right?
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I get why you do it. You just don't know how the tires come to life again after going through that period of being cooled down and it being a harder tire, etc. And so I think the team just kind of rolled the dice, said, well, there could be a big, massive differential, which there was, but for a very small amount of time on and as we saw from Ricciardo and Kvyat, once the tires were up to temp, it was still nearly impossible to get by, even if you had an advantage with that extra grip with the new tire.
Right. Yeah, tough call. I think everybody was scratching their head thinking, oh my gosh, what an idiot move. And I didn't see it that way. I kind of understood why they tried it. And it goes back to that adage, Paul, and we see this play out every single race practically, that there's a safety car. Safety cars hurt some people and they help others. Yeah. And it's just the way it is. Racing Point was trying to be safe. They were trying to run that gambit and it didn't work.
Yeah, and sometimes you can look like a genius and not, and it's really just a 50-50 decision, and that's just the way it is. So.
Yep. Let's see. Stroll tapped Ocon at the start, chewed his front wing up, so he had to stop for a new one, then stopped 2 more times, which included running into his pit crew. And he hit the front jackman pretty hard. And they had to carry him through the garage. Thankfully, I think he's okay. Has anyone seen Lance Stroll lately? The real Lance Stroll? I mean, is he still at home with COVID and we're watching a stunt double at this point? Is this Hal Needham behind the wheel? I don't know what's going on. Right now, I would take Vettel and keep Sergio and set Lance down or send him to IndyCar in another series or something. This is not the Lance we've seen in previous races, at all. So let's hope he completely turns it around and becomes the Lance that we've seen in the past and pulls it up. But yeah, what yet another. Today. Yeah, what a ragged.
Of the bad luck.
Exactly. What a ragged weekend.
That's all we know. Coincidence? I don't know. You see how big his hair is?
He's awful hairy.
He is.
He's Team Jacob, isn't he? He's Team Jacob. Oh boy, he's a werewolf.
Yes.
Yeah, ragged weekend. I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was touch and go with the contact there. I think could easily gone either way and not been anything. But yeah, and his excuse of cold tires, well, that's fine, But that's your job, is to judge that. It's not the tires that do it; it's your judgment of where the tires are that does that kind of thing. So it's unfortunate, but don't be so hard on the boy. He's been sickly.
I
recently.
know. Well, he has. I know, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, I've seen Lance do some terrific, podiums and do some terrific races. I know he's fully capable of doing it. It just seems like the last 3 races or so, it's just been last 2 has been a ragged weekend.
So what
I'm
you're
not
saying
sure.
is COVID corrected, he'd have won the past 2 races.
Yeah, I think so. I think COVID. Yeah, I think he was COVID limited. Yeah, I think at this point. Yep. McLaren, Carlos Sainz, P7, Lando Norris, P8. Sainz had a terrific pass of Lando Norris early on, and he actually looked racy to me, but never seemed to be able to take on the AlphaTauris or the Renault of Ricciardo. Carlos and Lando ran together for most of the day, but they couldn't really move up. And despite that, a 2-car points haul is really good. Got him 134 points, on par with Racing Point. Just a point behind Renault in the Constructors' Championship for 3rd, but I think it's a good result. I was thinking that the McLarens might be a little racier here, and I would say for the first half of the race, I really kind of felt like Carlos was, but it just didn't materialize.
Yeah, I think they maximized their ability here. I think they were pretty good to finish 6th and 7th, actually.
Yeah. I kind of thought they'd get ahead of Ricciardo and the Renaults.
Did you?
Yeah, I really did. I thought Carlos had a great start, got that pass, looked really racy. I thought he was gonna do it, but I was completely out of my mind.
Yes, you're insane, sir.
Insane.
Yeah, I think I think they maximized their potential there. I don't think they had enough for Ricciardo at all, actually. But and even for the Racing Point for that matter. So for what they got, double points finished nose to tail is actually a little better than they've had recently. So they should be happy. Yeah.
I was just trying to will some sort of goodwill and great result for Grace out of this thing.
Oh, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. About as good as Alfa Romeo, who had Kimi Räikkönen in P9, Antonio Giovinazzi in P10. Antonio started
The
on
newly signed pair.
Yes, newly signed. That is strange. Yes, the big announcement that both have been re-signed. Yes. So, strange there. You got seats open. Could have brought Schumacher in. Is Schumacher going to Haas now? What's going on? He had 2 seats.
Giovinazzi's manager? Is it like the same one as Grosjean? Because somehow he lengthened his career by 2 or 3 years for no
Sure
reason.
did. Yeah. Sure did. Yeah, whoever his manager is, I don't know what they pay him, but they're not paying him enough, man.
Yeah, got a lot of photos in their
right.
in their envelopes. I'm thinking,
right. Let's hope
might want to rethink getting rid of Giovanni.
Yeah. Let's hope he doesn't have his laptop at some service shop somewhere. That's not going to end well for him. But so very very unfortunate for some of those young guns that were really targeting that seat. Eilert and Schumacher and that kind of thing. I would have thought that if Schumacher was going to go up to F1, it would have been at Alpha and not at Haas.
Right.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a cheap ride at Haas. I don't know. I don't know the ramifications here. But you're right.
Yeah.
It would have made complete sense. But
Yeah, I would have thought so. Anyway, Antonio started the softs. That launched him up to 14th from his lowly starting place at 20th. So up 6 places on the first lap. A great Kimi-like first lap, for sure. The earlier stop may have hurt him slightly, but he did manage to get up into the points in P10. It was a very good run from Antonio, and he was driving like a guy who had just recently been re-signed for another season.
Maybe they didn't tell him till after. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a good race for Alfa Romeo. They've been dwindling the back a bit too much, I think. So for them to get both cars in the points, even though it's a meager amount of points, it's points nonetheless. And Kimi's had some bad luck recently, so it's good to see him have a really good run also.
It was. He had a long first stint, made the most of it by running up to 4th place before stopping. Once Kimi stopped, he came out behind Russell, remained patient, gave the team their first double points result of the season, which was really good. All things considered, he was voted driver of the race, and
Kimi was.
Yeah, I don't really know why. Look, you and I are big Kimi fans. Don't get me wrong. I think the Kimster is awesome, and you and I've met him. And he's a cool guy. But
sure.
But I'm not driver of the race. I didn't see that.
Yeah, they're weird.
Yeah. So here's to all you in Finland getting out with your vote. Good job to Finland. That's why we love Finland.
Maybe there's some kind of outage in Finland. They didn't have any.
Yeah, right.
The Formula 1 race.
Yeah, they're all bored sitting around watching the F1. Oh, yeah, of course it's Kimi, driver of the race.
Yeah.
Yes, good job, Finland. Proud of you guys up there. Let's see, where are we? We are on Williams F1. George Russell. Oh, man.
Painful.
Very painful. Lost his car behind the pace car trying to warm up his tires. Clouts the wall, race over. If there was ever a moment that George Russell wanted to feel what Mika Hakkinen felt that time that he knelt beside the circuit with his head in his hands, this was it. George felt terrible. But here's the upside for George. He is not the only driver that's lost it behind a safety car. There are plenty.
Speaking of Grosjean, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a tough deal trying to get those tires warmed up in a right efficient way, but I think he probably learned a big lesson at that point when there's a good time to do it and a bad time to do it. And that was a bad time to do it. Going downhill, I guess he hit a bump or something like that. And not the time for full throttle application. But
yeah. Have you ever had any dodgy moments behind a safety car?
No.
No?
No, I can remember.
Yeah.
I always loved the safety car and restarts and stuff. I relish that stuff. So
yeah. That's cool. Well, anyway, his race was over.
If you're going to ask me if I made a mistake, I'm obviously not going to tell you anyway. But
of course,
I want to keep everyone's opinion of me, completely false.
That's why they call you Teflon Paul. Nothing sticks to you, man. Yeah, that's great. Hey, on the other side, Latifi was set out on a long first stint, and like Kimi, he jumped up the field. They were really both driving well, both banging on the door, scoring points. And with Verstappen DNF'd, that left George actually in the points, and that's why it's so tragic that he didn't get that point.
Right,
I would have loved to see it. And especially, did you see the interview with Fernando Alonso when they asked Fernando, of all the new rookies, all the young guns that are in there, which one really stood out to him? And Fernando said it was George Russell.
Oh, he didn't say Lance Stroll?
No, I know. Shocking. Yeah. But he said, he didn't say Lando. He didn't say, he said George Russell he thought was the real deal.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I kind of agree with him. You and I have talked. George Russell is a man in a car that isn't doing anything for his career or shining a highlight. But knowing how difficult that car is, I really do believe George Russell is the shit.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard for us. Hopefully, it gets the chance for us to evaluate him properly against the Landos, etc., in a better car.
Yeah,
very,
for sure.
Very soon. But everyone makes mistakes. That was a learning experience for him.
Yep. Let's see. Haas F1, Kevin Magnussen, DNF, Roman Grosjean, P14.
Party in the Haas tent afterwards.
Did I mention Roman Grosjean?
A prodigious talent.
He's a prodigious talent, that Roman Grosjean. Let's see. Kevin ran a long first stint and was a bit of what we call a truly train. From the old days where he's holding up quite a few other cars behind him. Kevin was experiencing severe headaches, he said, when upshifting. They were having a clutch problem, and the upshifts were so violent that it started giving him a severe headache. And at that point, he was like, I'll try to hang it out there. But, the team was like, look, you're out of the points, and it's really about health at this point. We don't want to beat you up and pull it in and DNF it, and that's what they did. But, Paul, that must have been some serious upshifts.
Yeah, I mean, the car, the upshifts are harsh enough in the best of times, quite honestly. Yeah. I mean, I think the Formula 1 gear was very smoothed out quite a lot, but in general, with you got to think all that power, all that torque, and if there's any kind of delay, which it seemed there was a bigger delay between the shifts, which obviously compromises his performance anyway. But that delay and then that kick back in just basically slammed his head against the back of the car every time he makes a shift.
Right, brutal.
Yeah,
just brutal. Roman got a time penalty for continually exceeding track limits and didn't have the straight line speed to compete, so that's where he was trying to make up his time, certainly around those corners.
He was trying to escape, actually. He kept trying to find the exit gate, and you're out of bounds again there, Roman. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I can't remember where what they call those rings where they train the horses, that are constantly trying to escape from the fence until finally they break and they stop and look at you. That was Roman. He was constantly going around the circuit trying to find the gate out. That's what it was. So anyway, unfortunately, that's how they finished. But we do have some awards because we like to hand those out. And the first award we typically give is Pass of the Race. Woo! Yes.
Coming ever the more. Been very difficult these past couple of years.
It has. I know, and it's almost to the point where I got to change the awards because Pass of the Race with DRS is just really difficult these days. But anyway, I did ID Daniel Ricciardo and Kevin Magnussen on the outside early on. I thought it was a fun pass.
Yeah.
A very, very D-Rick move.
Right. And I picked Daniel Kvyat on Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
Leclerc.
I had that one written down too.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, as I said, most of them were DRS assisted at best.
Yeah.
And it's a little unfair when you got tire deg differentials, but for me, it was a matter of Kvyat got the job done where other people didn't, even if they had this fresher tire, and it was an important position for him. Yeah,
P4 is fantastic position for Daniel, and I know everyone says he's toast in F1, but it was a great result nonetheless. All right, that leaves Donkey of the Race. Oh my. Oh, let me take this moment to compliment you on your amazing T-shirt that I love.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. It's new.
Yeah,
it's new and old again. The old is new again. Something like that. Yeah.
You got Team Ken Frothjob Tyrrell with Elf. I love it.
Yeah. I just remember when I was a kid, my whole wardrobe was just racing shirts and stuff like that. So break it in and break it out.
Yeah.
I still got a hankering for a Tyrrell or an Arrow shirt every now and again,
Yeah. Cool. I love it.
Thank you.
Yes.
If only the Fashion Award was this weekend, I might have had a shot at it.
Yeah, I think you would have. No doubt about that. All right. What are we? Donkey of the Race. Who'd you have?
Well, I went for the obvious one, which was George Russell. The good difference between Pass of the Race and Donkey of the Race is donkeys. There was plethora of those this weekend. But you got to give it to George. Not only did he throw it away behind a pace car, which we weren't kind to Grosjean, so we can't be kind to George either, even if we think he may have a bit more talent, and especially at a race when you actually really had the chance to actually get those points.
Brutal.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like he's the kind of guy that will never make that mistake again.
Right.
I kind of feel like he's the kind of guy that is harder on himself than anyone in the rest of the world would be right now. Yeah. And he just seems like that kind of guy. I went with the obvious choice. I went with Lance Stroll. I think that's 2 races in a row, dude. I mean, you're out to lunch here. Come on, man. Get it back. I know he's got it in him. I've seen some great racing out of Lance Stroll, and I'd love to see it again.
Yeah.
I bet his dad would too. Because here's the problem, Lance. You are tied at 134 points, man. You cannot be trundling around in the back when Sergio Perez is going for podiums. This is the guy your dad is firing to get Vettel in, right?
Yes.
You can't just be trundling around, whatever, 13, it was a tough race, whatever, where's the caviar, right? You can't be doing that. You got to get up there because it's worth millions of dollars to your dad for you to score right up there to get Racing Point 3rd in the Constructors. So that's why I give it to him.
All right. Brutal.
Was that fair? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Whatever. Maybe. All right. Driver of the race. Good guy.
I got to do that this time.
Yeah, you did. Love it. Yeah. All right. Who'd you get? Driver of the race.
Who did I give it to? I gave it to Daniel Ricciardo. Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Attaboy.
Even though he did do the shoey thing again, right?
Yeah, that's going to be,
You got to leave that. You got your podium now. You just got to leave that for the next win there, Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. You got to leave it for the next win.
Yeah, but good driver. Said he didn't make the mistakes that others did on that warm-up phase.
Yeah.
At the restart, and he managed to hold back Kvyat, who was on fresh tires, and was in a pretty decent ridiculously quick car as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a great job, no doubt about it. I was going to go Kvyat. I think I could definitely give it for Daniel. I think he did a great job, picked up the baton. Everybody was expecting Gasly to do well. He qualified fourth. He was going to, head for the podium or at least fourth place. And to be honest with you, is a DNF. But to Daniel's credit, man, he picked up the pieces and took that team exactly to where Pierre qualified. I thought it was a great result for Daniel Kvyat, so absolutely. I totally could give it for Daniel. I'm going to give it to Lewis, though, because I know.
What the hell did he do?
I know you're at home going, what the hell? Yeah, but Lewis, because here's the thing, man. That weekend was a tangible example of just how good that team is and just how good Lewis is as a driver. They had him out there. The tire wear wasn't as bad as they may have thought it was going to be. Lewis was managing his tires. They boxed Bottas. They're playing cover with Max Verstappen. They radioed to Lewis, wait a minute, we think we might run him long and we might get an overcut out of this, but he's got to produce, and he did, right? And so it's one thing to come up with a strategy thinking all we need is about 6 more seconds. It's another thing radioing the driver and getting that 6 seconds, right?
Right.
And that's not always easy because you got traffic that he came into and would he get through? And, and I just think that's just an example of a driver and a team, all 6 cylinders banging in sequence perfectly. And I thought it was a great example. So
agreed. Yeah,
I give it to Lewis.
Good
All right, let's do some mailbag.
You got mail.
Woo! First up, Brian asks, hi, Todd and Paul. So when Daniel spun out, this was the last race. Yes, last week. So when Daniel spun out at the end of Q2 and his tires looked ruined, I was wondering, since he made it through to the session, and if those were the tires he did his fastest lap on, how would they determine what set he would have started the race on? Love the show. I look forward to it each week. Well, Brian, that is a great question. And Paul and I talked about this last week. I don't know exactly because I haven't read the regulations. I think, Paul, we both decided that he spun on a set of softs. If he flat spotted or ruined those, they probably would have made him start on another pair of scrub softs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The next best set, I think.
Yeah.
But ultimately he spun, and the tires that he ruined weren't the tires he set his qualifying time on. So
Right.
and it didn't matter, but it could be a scenario that crops up for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know. So if any of you regulation wonks are out there listening and you know the answer to this, leave the answer in the comment section of this podcast on the website, theparcfermé.com, because I just haven't had a chance, Brian, to look up the regulations. Yeah, I would suspect that if he set the fastest time in Q2 on a set of softs and then he spun and flat spotted those, he'd start the race on softs.
Right.
Yeah.
Wish softs are the big question. Yeah.
Right. Which ones?
Where does he start? Anyway.
Yeah. So it's a great question, though. Great question. Next question. PJ asks, is there a viable method to influence Liberty Media about track selection? I was mesmerized at the in-car camera views, elevation changes coupled with corners make Autodromo International do Algarve one of the most enjoyable tracks to view. A few changes to allow for other than DRS passing would be needed, but the elevation changes alone make it a beautiful experience. I agree, PG, in the sense that I love elevation changes, and that's the one thing that you'll see a lot of fans comment about Spa, Nürburgring, Algarve, all of these tracks that have elevation changes that are pretty dramatic are just beautiful to watch.
Yeah. You get to see the car more actively in that.
You do.
You
do.
You really do.
I love it, Paul, when when you were out at Sonoma, and it's got off-camber corners, cambered corners and downhill, and it's just a lot of fun to see. What was that big hill? It was like 11 stories?
Yeah, going to the carousel, yeah.
Yeah, going to the carousel. And it's so fun to watch cars working those elevation and those off-camber and on-camber corners.
Yeah, and it's a bigger challenge for the teams too, and a challenge for the drivers on a corner by corner, lap by lap basis than the flat tracks, which basically you get your setup, and that's it levels it doesn't allow the driver to influence as much as those kind of old world tracks.
Right. Yeah, so I agree, PG. I wish there was because I love those tracks.
Yeah.
How would you pronounce this? Sean Xean, Xean. I don't know. Every time I pronounce his name, I don't. I'm assuming it's him. Sorry, don't know. But anyway, I'm always butchering the name. Anyway, Xean asks, after watching the amazingly cool track that is the Portuguese Grand Prix, another amazing tracks we've seen this year, it makes me wonder, do you think anyone has tapped Tilke on the shoulder and said, hey, bud, your tracks suck. Seriously, why do they keep going with this guy and design cutting-edge Borefest? Again, on the track side of this is that's the one thing all of this European-centric calendar has brought us, is lots of old-school tracks, lots of elevation changes, none of this sterilized, 45-degree angle corners and 90-degree angles, none of this stuff just, that's billiard table flat. And I, for one, I'm with you guys. I absolutely love these old circuits.
Yeah, it would be nice to think that the racing and the tracks were the old world ones draw enough attention to be able to skew the desire for just to get your 40 million from the Saudi Arabia group and put a bunch of cones out and have Formula One cars race around them.
Yeah,
you would hope that would then bring the passion and draw more people back into the sport because of that.
And some of that is, let's be fair to Herman. I mean, some of that's the land that the race promoter purchased and the lay of the land, right? But it was, you say, well, there isn't a lot of elevation change in Abu Dhabi, and okay, fair enough. But that's why the crew at Austin, they built that up. They made this elevation change. Yes, it had a hill there, but they made sure that they really kept that as a feature of that track when they could have just graded it level, but they didn't. So I agree with that. Let's see. Finally, Paul, our friend Paul Richards in Shoreham by Sea.
Yes.
Not in Kent, by the way.
No, it's not in Kent, but as I said to him, I think it's really going to be part of the Commonwealth of Kent soon, so you better get ready.
As Kent, the empire of Kent expands.
It is expanding. It's going to work its way from the outside back in. You
remember the British Empire? Now it's the Kentian Empire. It's going to take over the British Isles. Yes. Yeah. Yep. So there you go, Paul. You better start speaking Kentian, whatever that sounds like.
It's just a bunch of bells and pings and dots. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, Paul says, let's see, maybe you can pass this question on to the three of you. It says, whilst we all know this won't happen, hypothetically speaking, if Lewis Hamilton announced his retirement, who would take his seat? If that happened, there would be a mad scramble with all the drivers trying to talk their way out of their current contract. It's the number one seat, and all these drivers are locked into contracts. My first reaction was Max. Max would take his seat, and he would find a way to get out of that Red Bull contract. Paul, you don't agree? You think he's locked in?
I think he's locked in. I can't imagine that Red Bull would, first off, they've performed well enough not to have a big open clause for Max to get rid of him for this next year, maybe a year after that he can get out. But for the next year, I would say the worst thing that could happen for Red Bull is to put Max in a Mercedes. So they would do everything to stop that happening.
If it was a shock announcement like Rosberg, like if he won a 7th title and like over Christmas said, I'm done, I think the immediate reaction, like if the team didn't know it either, like if the team was a little surprised by it,
right.
I would say then the logical, immediate, quick choice, like they had to do with Bottas, would be Perez or maybe Hulkenberg in that seat as a safe choice, right?
Outside choice would be Russell. Right.
Outside choice would be Russell.
It depends how confident they are with the car, and obviously that would then move Bottas to a number one spot. If you brought in Hulk and Perez, it might be something they would look at more favorably just because of the experience and moving into the biggest, most successful team in Formula One right now is a big ask for Russell, but they're also pretty confident, and rightfully so, that their car can perform so well. And Bottas, even though he may not be beating Hamilton, he's not losing by very, very much at all. So the performance of that car should be very similar, even if Bottas was driving and Lewis wasn't. I'm not saying Lewis isn't a has that it factor that makes a lot of things happen, which
He
he
certainly does.
But still, the domination of Mercedes can't be ignored.
Right.
You know?
And in the hands of Bottas, it does pretty damn well.
Yeah, and everyone and they know Russell very well. They really know what he's capable of, but they also know they can't find him an opportunity because of, just circumstances of how things are evolving in the field.
You know, if I was Toto, and that's hedging whether Toto will be there or not, but if I was leading that team and Lewis decided, I would probably take a gamble. I'd probably go with George Russell, to be honest with you, because I've got Bottas, and I know Bottas is going to deliver. And so I probably would take a flyer on George. But if Mercedes was a little reticent about throwing a youngster in that car, then I think the safe choice, if you couldn't get Max, which is what I'd want, but if I couldn't get Max, picking up Perez or Hulk would be a safe bet. I don't see any reason Perez wouldn't deliver some serious points in that car alongside Bottas. I think that would be a pretty daunting pairing.
If I was a Mercedes, the company, probably look at Hulkenberg just because of the German.
I would too, yeah.
I think, Hulk and Perez will both bring really a lot of talent to the team. But if you're a racer and you're the Toto Wolff of the world, you'd bring in Russell because you just want to see it happen.
Right. Yeah, if you couldn't get Max, that's what I would do. So there you go. All right, well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think of the race. I know. So how the time flies, man. Yeah, it's amazing. But be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion with decorum and civility. A huge thank you to all of those that are remaining as Patreon supporters. Yes, we've lost a few, and that really does make life difficult for us to do this. But for those of you that have hung in there and doing so, we wouldn't and couldn't do this podcast without you. So thank you so much for continuing to support us. Big thank you to Skip Williams and everyone at Kingsbridge BCP. Skip is doing a fantastic job of now that he basically has his foot on our necks, Paul.
Yeah.
And has passed us in the Fantasy GP. You and I got to team our resources. We're going to have to start sharing our best picks with each other. We're going to have to go after this guy.
I'm not sharing my data, I tell you. But
Yeah. You need to tweet your data, Anyway, so congrats to Skip, who jumped 11 places, and then another 3 or 4 or something. The guy is coming on.
Grief.
So to Don Racing, I'm just giving you guys a heads up right now. Skip is coming, and hell's coming with him. You guys got to do something and stave him off if you wish to. And if you want to see, look for the link onto Twitter. But Skip at Kingsbridge BCP does a great job of tallying up every week all of our results, and you can see our results over there. And he does a great job. Over there.
Sure does. It's a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. And Skip keeps us all frosty. So great job. And if you like the podcast, then go over. Look, it's still one of the better host, for a host limited podcast, it's still one of the better F1 podcasts out there, being host limited as I am.
We can't afford suits, just T-shirts and
just
polo
T-shirts. Well, polos. I wore my, my Racing Marshall high vis yellow, again.
Yeah.
So anyway, but give us some love over at iTunes and give us a good rating over there. We appreciate it. Until we're going to see another track. And it is a Tilke track, but of all the Tilke tracks, it's one of the better ones in Turkey.
Yes.
So in a couple weeks' time, we'll be back.
Never thought we'd be back there.
I know, I didn't either. Here we are. So Paul and I going to dust off the old Turkish Grand Prix circuit discussion, and so this should be fun. So join us in a couple weeks for that. But as for next week, we'll have Grace back on, and we'll get her rundown of the last several races and see what she thinks about it. So until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.